Okay, welcome back. It is late August 1875, and yeah, it's been a couple of months again, so for usual performative apologies for having left this such a long period of time between games. There won't always be such long breaks, and hopefully during this kind of Christmas break, which for me lasts until mid-January, there'll be opportunities to kind of get some kind of sessions in and get some videos out. Although I think my intention last time when I played was to do kind of a few videos in one session, and then I think after the video, my phone rang or something, and sort of the kind of mediocrities of everyday life took over, and that's been the case since. We left off still in the early days, really, of what I think is our fifth Austrian war. The first one was a sensational success. We took Vienna. The second one, I think, was from what I remember, was the really kind of touch and go bloodbath, fought defensively mostly around kind of Bulgaria and northern Greece. The third one, we managed to take Vienna again, which seemed sensationally easy. And then the last war, we kind of got ourselves into a bit of a pickle, where we kind of just a little bit too much confidence, a bit of hubris. We pushed a little bit too hard, especially in the kind of western sector, and the kind of Bosnia-Herzegovina salient. And very almost kind of looked at a pretty serious defeat in the field. We managed to avoid that. We secured the opportunity to get a white peace. And we're back at war with the Austrians once again, and it wasn't a great time to leave it for a couple of months, because as I remember, just kind of watching the last video that I did, I had to watch for myself to kind of, try and sort of remember a little bit where where I'd left off, what the situation was. We had a little bit of a kind of cliffhanger in Transylvania, with in Kronstadt, a fairly significant Austrian force kind of enveloped, and I say enveloped in an inverted commas, as I've often impressed that, I try to impress upon anyone watching the campaign diary. It's not 20th century warfare, really. It's not quite kind of continuous front lines yet, although we are getting into the area really where it's going to be very difficult now for enveloped forces to get out of tricky situations. But anyway, this is a very large Austrian force. It is enveloped. It doesn't mean that it won't be possible for this force to make it back to friendly lines, but it's a hopeful situation indeed. This war was meant to be purely a defensive campaign, fought around northern Bulgaria, kind of maybe Bosnia, northern Greece, to try and emulate the success of really just attritional kind of containment of the Austrians, wear them down, and then use that as an opportunity for kind of offensive maneuver operations. And there has been a little bit of mission creep. We're now deep into Transylvania. In the west, where we got into a bit of a sticky situation in the last war, we tried to be a little bit more disciplined and just conduct kind of scoot and shoot a little bit. We've had a couple of big battles around Sarajevo, and we have definitely kept the Austrians in check here. We're moving up the second army under Hussein Avni into Sarajevo to try and reinforce this position. We've given the Austrians a bit of a drubbing here. In terms of the Austrian forces, we can see they look very much contained in the west. And in the east, as I say, there's a chance we have enveloped a large part of the Austrian army here. And the hope is that the supply situation of this force ends up getting worse and worse, and we can really kind of capitalize on that, but we'll see what happens. We have used this war to kind of showcase the new fleet, which I'm going to bring back to Constantinople now. We've really just used it to kind of try and provide some intelligence, kind of in the Gulf of Venice, to just sort of see if there's any Austrian forces coming back from Italy or anything like that. And it's been fun to kind of get the fleet out. It is a fleet that we've built at great expense, and it has to be said as well, it's expensive to run this fleet now. We are running an economy that is coal thirsty, to put it lightly, and it has been a kind of a feature of the last few years. Really, we've had two issues. One, we've started to reach certain natural limits in terms of the amount of plant that we can build, the kind of economic expansion that we can enjoy without further technological development, which is to say that we can increase the productive yield of farms, mines, this kind of thing, which in turn creates a bigger demand on the manufacturing sector, especially things like mechanical parts, chemicals, that kind of thing. But beyond developing kind of technique and technology which increases the yield of our factories, at this point, there's not much more that we can kind of invest in terms of generating new plant without starting to create serious distortions. And that is a thing with the game that I've gone into before, is a lack of discipline. You kind of think, I even did it with this campaign a little bit, is as soon as I saw an opportunity to upgrade all of our agricultural sites, you can't just downgrade them once you've introduced chemicals and mechanical parts to producing things like tobacco and wheat and fruits. You can't just kind of go back to where you were, unfortunately. And it means then you have this kind of huge demand for mechanical parts and and chemicals and whatnot. So anyway, the economy for the most part is okay. The way we're dealing with capital is, as you recall, for a few years now, we've been exporting capital to China to basically try and develop the Chinese kind of productive plant, really, which might create an interesting dynamic down the road in terms of sort of shifting geopolitical possibilities. You know, I mean, a powerful China is certainly no threat to us, and it's certainly a distraction to, for example, Russia, which we've been blessed with a Russia completely preoccupied with Scandinavia, ahistorically, you know, locked into a kind of forever war with the Prussians, which has also diminished Prussia's ability to really unite Germany. So we do live in very much an interesting parallel universe. And a part of the idea of the 1880 reset, which I've still not decided on, I have given it some thought over the couple of months, was to kind of re-anchor the world a little bit into a kind of world which we can identify with, that is within the kind of realms of plausibility a little bit as well, and that kind of thing. I haven't decided on it. I mean, a part of the thing as well is that, I mean, by 1875, which we're in now, we are very much in the twilight days of Abdelaziz. He gets nailed next year in a coup d'etat, gets replaced by Murad V, which is his nephew. So Murad V is the son of Abdul Masih, who was our first sultan. And he's only in power for like 6 months, I think, like a really short period of time. And then he gets supplanted by Abdul Hamid. And Abdul Hamid is like our Victorian era monarch. I mean, we are going to be going into the Hamidian era, which gives you an idea as to how long this guy was in power. He's going to be in power to, I think, 1907, something like that. It's around the time of the Young Turks coup, sort of. And he's not the best monarch. He's not the worst either. The game is a little bit harsh in terms of the statistics it gives him. But one of the problems with Abdul Hamid is that the statistics give him, I think, no diplomat income at all. And without any kind of diplomat income of diplomatic resources, so we can't basically make any moves on the international stage, it really limits our play. It makes us as kind of like a overdeveloped driftwood, which is a little bit, I think that like the clout that the Ottoman Empire would have on the international stage would be a function of its economic development and its military capacity. And our military capacity has been proven in the field in multiple wars against the Austrians, plus a war against Russia, which is our first war. And we've built an economy now that is sizable and is a real kind of engine of war. It's this economy that gives us the revenue, the tax revenue from the transactions that we can invest in the Academy of Sciences, which allows us to, you know, have a kind of attain a kind of scientific sort of parity, at least in terms of in terms of military anyway, scientific parity with the Western powers that enables us to punch far above our weight in terms of where the Ottomans really were in you know, the mid 1870s. And I think that the kind of clout that the Ottomans would have had, that is to say, the diplomatic resources that they could spend to make moves on the international stage, or indeed colonization, would have been a function of that. So I don't think that, you know, I mean, Abdul Hamid, okay, he was a fairly absolutist ruler, but I think there would have been people around him and that kind of thing. So anyway, a part of the 1880 idea was to see whether I could kind of manipulate or mod one of the files to give Abdul Hamid kind of diplomat income, which I successfully did. It's not too difficult. I'm not any kind of modding genius or anything like that. And I played a few turns, didn't do anything as the Ottomans in 1880. Abdul Hamid came to power, and sure enough, it worked. I had diplomat income, but the monarch kind of file, it's not specific to the 1880 campaign. So my hunch is that when he comes to power in this campaign, I should also reap the benefits of that kind of modding, which is just changing a couple of figures in a text document. So theoretically, I'm not sure if it'll work or not, because the game is already loaded. I'm not sure if the game already loads all the mod. I don't know how it works, but my hope is that I'll have diplomat income with Abdul Hamid, because he's going to be in power for like 30 years, and it would be a duller game than I mean, if the Ottomans were quite weak, I quite relish the idea of an 1880 campaign where the Ottomans are quite weak, you're fairly defensive. You know, I wouldn't mind it not having a diplomat income, because the Ottomans would have been driftwood, and that'd be quite fun. You're playing a purely defensive campaign, you're trying to keep your head above water, you know, and that tends to sharpen you a little bit as well. So that was a part of it as well, is the idea that I'd have diplomat income in 1880. It'd be a little bit kind of challenging again, you know. That to say, I mean, it's still challenging. I mean, we're not, you know, it's not the case that we're always going to definitely win a war against Austria. We've managed to not be defeated in a war so far. But we've had, you know, a couple of times we've got in really sticky situations, and we managed to whittle them down to a white peace, which has really been a bit of a get out for us. So See what happens. I mean, I haven't decided. I'm leaning more onto the side of just continuing this campaign. In terms of it being game-breaking for anyone that's kind of following the campaign, I mean, I would say that the kind of suspension of disbelief that you have to sort of, you know, that you're employing to believe the idea that I'm running the Ottoman Empire in the late 19th century, it's only a slight extension of that to believe that there's a massive political crisis that causes a partial collapse of the Ottoman polity that results in a kind of an 1880 reset. One thing that I find really upsetting, I think the main thing that bothers me is the idea of having to rebuild the fleet, which is kind of a bit of a pride of this campaign, is that I've created a kind of modern, powerful fleet for the Ottoman Empire, and the idea that I'm just basically going to have, you know, like a bunch of old Age of Sail ships that I'm going to have to replace as well, and probably will lose some technologies because we've invested in technology which we otherwise wouldn't have had, you know, to kind of fast track it, which is a very expensive and efficient way of doing it, but nevertheless. So, yeah, I'm kind of erring on the side of continuing this campaign all the way to the kind of bitter end, and it would be such a boon if we get Abdul Hamid with diplomat income. So we'll see if that happens anyway. In terms of our moves, for late August 1875, there's not much I'm going to do, I don't think. I mean, in Kronstadt, we've got two commands. We've got the 8th Army under Abdi Pasha, and then Ahmed Pasha commands the 5th. These supply wagons, I'm going to just put inside the... Hang on, are these supply wagons? No, they are. They are in Kronstadt. They're just made to look like they're not. We're going to just put inside the town that we've captured off of the Austrians, partly because they have elements that need reconstituting. I'm not sure if they'll be reconstituted in Kronstadt. They might need to get to Bucharest. They might need to be in a kind of a depot town or depot city for that to happen, but I guess we'll soon find out. Yeah, I'm going to basically hold our position. Offensive posture. We'll keep the 3rd Order on offensive posture to the north. Under Abdul Karim. 6th Army under Ahmed Mukhtar. In Hermannstadt, I think we'll keep him in place as well. I mean, it's good in the east. We're activated pretty much across the board. Save for Osman Nuri. But we're going to keep position here also. We've got significant forces. We are, you know, there's a little bit of supply issue going on with the 5th Army. What you tend to find in Pride of Nations and Age of Games more generally is where you get really big force concentration. It doesn't matter how much development you have. Really significant force concentration in a small area will eat through supplies really quickly. Probably later on we get double railroads and slightly more sophisticated kind of infrastructure. The nudging effect of supplies is maybe a bit more effective, but yeah, when you concentrate, you know, the truth is, even though the kind of AI does it, once if you try and kind of, like, Age of Games are really good in that there aren't really many exploits. Battles happen sometimes with variable results, you know, reflecting contingent events, chance and luck. And if you try and just build massive doom stacks of 1 million men, the truth is that you're just not going to be able to supply them, you know, like. So there's a trade-off between concentration and logistics, really, which is quite realistic, you know. So in terms of the East, we're going to pretty much keep everything as it is. The forces that are activated, we're going to keep activated and keep on offensive posture. Just going to make sure this is... I mean, the Austrian force here is significant. But we've got good local forces that can kind of come... I wonder how long it'll take 4th Army to get up to Hermannstadt. 10 days now, I don't fancy that. No, we're going to keep the 6th Army in Hermannstadt. Not the 6th Army, I'm talking about the 4th Army, I beg your pardon, in Drobeta. And in the west, we'll get the 2nd Army moving up at Hussein Avenue. I have mentioned before, I don't know what's going to happen next year with Hussein Avenue, because he's not just a general. I mean, he's the vizier, he is a political entity, and in real life, he's kind of elbow deep in the sort of the political intrigue against Abdelaziz, and it's quite interesting. Maybe when it comes to pass, I'll talk a little bit about it. I don't know, like, you know, I'm not any kind of authority on these events, but like, it's interesting nevertheless for a bit of immersion as well to kind of consider what's gone down. And Hussein Avenue does get nailed. He gets clipped as a result of basically getting involved in the coup in quite a peculiar way, because he's kind of behind the coup. The coup's successful, but then in very Romanesque fashion, you know, there's a real desire to punish the coup plotters, and he becomes a bit of a fall guy, a bit of a patsy, I suspect. Anyway, we've still got the remnants of the Greek rebellion, which is really all but, for the most part, cleared up now. We've got our kind of rear echelon Greek divisions. This is our Greek occupation force moving back to southern Greece, and we're kind of mopping up operations now. Got the 6th Marine Brigade moving up to Petric, which is being besieged by remnants of Greek forces. One of the enticing prospects of having diplomat income again, which we've not had for some years under Abdelaziz, because of the culminating political crisis, is reflected by pretty much a zeroing out of both admin and diplomat resources, reflecting chaos within the administration and so on. The enticing prospect of having diplomat income is that we can basically seal the deal with Greece, and also who are we at war with? we're basically locked into like guerrilla campaigns with miners, Greece and I think it's Wallachia or Moldavia. Basically, we're just going to look to white peace them. The thing is with these forever occupations is they seem like they're really terribly worthwhile, but they're not, because what happens is you just have a corrosive downward pressure on your national morale, which is inexorable, by the way. There's nothing you can do about it unless you win battles. So these forever occupations, they're kind of doable if you start playing a kind of 16th century Ottoman Empire and continuously go to war to bump up your national morale through success in battle. So it requires the prosecution of large successful military operations against great powers to offset, to kind of mitigate the downward pressure on national morale that you get as a result of basically ongoing, unending guerrilla warfare. So we're in a kind of forever war with the Greeks. And I mistakenly believed that these miners would like offer, even a white peace, they would offer us something, and they haven't. So yeah, it's the Ottomans and Moldavia, which is basically Romania and Greece. So yeah, 1 diplomat income a year is not much. It might even be 2. I can't remember how I modded it now, but anyway, we'll see when it happens. When it comes to pass, it may be the case. See, these mechanical goods shops are important to feed our agricultural base now, which is significant. But these, yeah, the diplomat income is good, you know, to kind of get out of these situations as well. Having no diplomats is not good. But yeah, I don't know whether modding Abdul Hamid's file is going to work, but guess we'll see in a year's time. I think I'll leave it at that. I don't think there's going to be any kind of moves to this turn, really. Yeah, these are the moves we're going to make. So I'm going to put you on pause, past turn, and we'll see you on the other side. Okay, welcome back. Early September, turn has been passed, and yeah, interesting stuff. I mean, only one significant engagement, that's fairly predictable in Kronstadt. It's a comfortable victory, so with all of our forces brought to bear, which is kind of, you know, local forces that are able to kind of march to the sound of the guns, we actually outnumber the Austrians. We've got 500,000 men against nearly 400,000 Austrians. We inflicted defeat, but it's not any kind of, nothing too devastating, and we inflict 20,000 casualties that look fairly heavily concentrated into a couple of militia regiments, or irregulars that have been destroyed. We take 5,000 casualties. What I'm more interested in here are these kind of force malices. I want to try and get an idea as to the kind of general status of this force. Nothing about supply, really. Subunit, insufficiently commanded. I think a part of the problem is that it's a large, unwieldy force, probably comprising lots of independent brigades. They've kind of almost gone back to like pre-Napoleonic warfare. Not using the core system. Maybe that's what that means. I might be reading that incorrectly. They were set to an offensive posture, so they fancied it. But what has happened is, I mean, von Rudich has turned out to be a slippery customer, because what has happened is this force has slipped south and is now in Bucharest, which is exactly the direction that we would like them to have slipped. I mean, in Kronstadt, he's not hide to nothing, really, unless he managed to get to Moldavia. But I think because of the kind of mountain range, I don't think you can, I think, yeah, they have to go, it would have to go via another tile anyway. So Moldavia was kind of locked off for him. That was the only open area. That was the only way you could have made it back, really. That could still happen, of course. I mean, he might now move up through Moldavia. Unless, I wonder if we can... Bukovina up here. Well, we can't... We're going to do it with that force, I guess. But, yeah, I mean, we can go from... That could be an option. I mean, this is a significant force in its own right, although with no commanders present that we can see anyway. But the 7th Army is... I mean, that's comprised of 3 corps, or 4 corps, 3 regular corps, 1 reserve, like a conscript corps. Plus, also present is an additional corps, mixed forces. This is a significant enough force here. And if we march the Third Army into Bukovina, it'll be on its Todd sort of thing. And it's a 12-day march, so it's sustained some degree of disorganization before it gets there, and there's nothing adjacent to support it. And we don't know what's in Tarnopol, you know, or Carpenton up here, so get on a limb here. But like doing that would kind of stop. I mean, this is a route of escape for the Austrian force. The other thing we should keep in mind is this is a massive Austrian force that, in terms of our intelligence anyway, doesn't have any issues with regard to supply just yet, and only has a 10% command penalty, which is intriguing. And there's not really very much between that force and Constantinople. And we've got the Arsenal and Adrianople, and a fairly good reserve pool, with no commanders able to command that. And we've obviously got a big garrison in Constantinople, so they wouldn't take it in one fell swoop. They would have to besiege it, and it would be a prolonged action. Like, enough time for us to bring forces down, so I don't think there's any imminent threat to it. But anyway, the other slippery customer are the remnants of this Greek rebellion. They've moved from Petrik into Plovdiv, and, you know, we're now kind of playing cat and mouse with them. We're going to keep our occupation force set to an offensive posture. This means that they default into engaging anything that's spawned in the area. The revolt risk in Marisa is hideous. 7.42%. That's mental. Alright, well, let's get it's light cavalry brigade, I guess. 10 days via an elaborate route. See, we had military police forces, I think, in some of these areas that destroyed. There we go, one military police regiment. Plus Bashi bazooks. I wonder if we move these military police, that's 4 days. I mean, the military police force do provide a bit of suppression, I believe. Supply ammo, patrol, evade, and support weight. I'm sure there was like a suppression factor, which is probably obvious to someone that's watching this, and okay, I can't see it, but I maintain that there is a suppression factor to these military police. Patrol, evade, ammo supply, police 8. I guess that's there. Maybe that's what that is. Maybe that's the police is the suppressive factor, or maybe that's the kind of lifting of morale. That's the main effect they have in a combined force, in a kind of field command. But it's a kind of an added kind of boon to that force. Right, well, I'm assuming they're in. I guess we'll pursue them. 9-day march. I think that's all we can do really with the Greeks, is just to try and pursue them. I mean, they're not any kind of serious threat, but obviously they're an irritant. An irritant at the rear. Cause a little bit dishevelled. It looks like they've reinforced their command in Bihać, which is interesting. So they now have a fairly impressive force here. Not enough that I feel compelled to move back from Sarajevo. Not least because in Sarajevo we get the added support of the garrison as almost like a kind of reserve force. It kind of factors in a little bit in the action. So I tell you what, we're going to hold our position. We are going to hold a defensive posture, however. The hope is the Austrians don't move straight away. So in the west they got Beiland Reit Corps. I think that's definitely how it's mispronounced anyway. We'll hold a position there. I feel confident that we can chase these Austrians, to tell you the truth. I mean, they are forces building up to the north. We're getting more concentration. Not so much in Ruthenian, but These are still relatively small forces. The larger forces in Moldavia, or Bukovina, rather. Right, I'll tell you what we're going to do then. We're going to move the Third Army, Abdul Karim Nadir. We're going to get him to move north to engage the 7th Army. We're going to set into an assault posture, attack at all costs. It's a bit of a risk because we don't know what's going to happen there. And weather's still good. It's early September. We're going to have probably 4 weeks of decent weather left, I suppose. Well, let's move the 5th and the 8th, because they're not actually... I mean, this tile, Kronstadt, there's no, like, northern boundary, really. They're essentially in the interior. They're to the rear, if you like, of the kind of front line. I say in inverted commas. How much of a march is it from here? It's 3 days, and I don't fancy that. We're going to keep the 4th Army in a supporting role, I think. We'll set an offensive posture, however, to engage the Austrians if they're kind of forced into Drobeta. I wonder how long it takes to march to 2 days. That's very nice. Okay. And there's no border between Hermannstadt and Bucharest, so we're going to be a little bit creative here. 5 days, 2 days. And these forces are all still in position to support. We're going to go for it. We're going to pressure this Austrian force as best we can. But Wilderingham, and it'll take him time to get through those supplies, but that's a really large force. When he has got, you can see from the pop-up, from our intelligence, he's got a lot of supply wagons, so it is carrying a lot of supplies, but we'll start working through that, I suspect. So defensive in the west then, continue to pursue the Greeks. Let's make sure that did the fleet make it back? I'm assuming it did. Yeah, main fleet's back, that's good. Okay, we'll get them Constantinople, get the crews on leave, get some R&R, get the ships restocked. Have a quick scout around the rest of the Empire, just check prestige to make sure we haven't lost anything. By the way, it's always a really good idea if you've got a large, which, you know, all Empire, I mean, the Ottomans are nowhere near the largest empire during this period. But if you're playing any faction that has a large, sprawling empire, always check your prestige. It's something that I do to see if I've lost any. And that's an indication as to whether you might have some colonial revolt. But obviously read your, your kind of reports as well. But it's a quick way of finding out whether you have some small peripheral colonial revolt that might have seized the colonial fort, because you'll probably lose 1 or 2 prestige points for that, and you can think, okay, something's going on. And again, the report is very small, the writing, so you can sometimes miss things. I'm going to read through the reports because I haven't done that yet, but the prestige looks good, nothing kind of developing or going on. See, if we get Abdul Hamid and we get a diplomat income, we can start making some moves on the Horn of Africa, which are quite fancy. We can't explore this interior region, but yeah, that could be quite fun. And also Sudan. Go to colonial. This is the colonial definitions. Yeah, there's, yeah. So these are the colonial regions. So this is a large colonial region of Sudan. Now, part of it is obscured, but that could be fun, especially if we end up gobbling. Again, that that sort of diplomat income gives us the kind of basis to gradually cannibalize our sort of Aelet in Egypt, reabsorb it back into kind of central control, which I think is kind of be a good project for the late 19th century. Bring Egypt back into the fold. Colonize Sudan and the Horn of Africa. That could be good fun. And there'll be some economic opportunities there as well. Especially with coffee and this kind of thing in East Africa. It could be good. Maybe opium as well. And we've got we've got Zanzibar down here. We could develop that into something as well in Kenya, Tanganyika and so on. And of course, if the German Empire doesn't really form, you know, Prussia might have limited means in terms of its kind of colloquial rubber there as well. Look, I mean, that's going to factor later on. Obviously, you know, we don't know that, but we do know that that will definitely factor in our later economy and the later global economy. Things like rubber and oil, of course, are already very well placed to benefit from the kind of. I mean, this period doesn't really capture the kind of true extent of the oil boom that would happen in the 20th century, but we'll get a taste. We'll get a taste of it towards the end of the campaign. And yeah, we're one of the best placed countries on earth to benefit from that, frankly. But all right. I think that's the moves we're going to make. I'm going to read through the reports, which I neglected to do. Whilst you're on pause, this is actually going to be 2 videos that I'm going to fuse together because I wasn't sure they hit pause during past turns, so I kind of ended the recording and started it again. So I'm going to try and seamlessly edit the video to make it seem as though, there we go, 6. So they're all committed on day 1, and it's a brief action, I think. Yeah, 2-round action. So even though some of these Austrian forces were set to kind of commit to an offensive, I think enough of them were set to evade or maybe head south, that the remainder just broke off. Engaged Greece. Okay, so there was an engagement there, but the Greeks just broke contact. And they look to be in Plovdiv to me. Yes, the fleet arrived day 13. Look at the capital we've got, it's absolutely insane. Net soldiers recruited -36. They're running a deficit, which is replacements and such. Talking of which. Let's look at our kind of strategic depth. Elite infantry, 1/5. It's nearly 1/3 replacements for line. That's nice. 1/4. 1/3. Now replacements look good. A bit more 40. That's a heavy cavalry. That actually, no, that's excessive. It's only we only need 20. Replacements look good, the strategic depth is decent. Okay, good. Fine. That's going to be our kind of merchants. Yeah, that's good. Now, we're in a good spot. No problems there. It's our frigate squadron being constructed, almost complete. They've got the L plates, so they're basically on shakedown, sort of proving kind of patrols. Armor trains, okay. Military statistics goes to the decision making. NCO training. Yeah, okay. Factory illumination is going to be big. 7 new structures in the force pool. So that's basically what that's going to be. Is force pool, meaning this obviously our factories. It's going to be new varieties of every factory, which won't be rebuilt. It'll be a case of upgrading the factories we've got. Problem with that is like how much more thirsty is that going to be in terms of sort of coal. The real qualitative change that we want is something that massively increases coal production, not just for us but other powers, and also whether other powers exploit it. I feel like there's just demand for coal is let's have a look. North Germany, 50 units from North Germany. crazy. We'll keep an eye on coal. We're at 680. We'll have a look next turn, see where we're at. The amount of coal we're importing is crazy. Right, let's have a look through them. So we saw one use of tea. $20 units of wines to Prussia. So export still outstripping, still outstripping the capital generated from our domestic market. I mean, the domestic market is significantly greater than it was, say, 10, 20 years ago, you know. But we really are an export power. You know, we even sell more units of merchandise now. It used to be the case that we sold more in the domestic market, but we made more on exports because we were exporting high-yield items. Now we're just selling more units of merchandise abroad. It's crazy. It's good, it's welcome, but it does make us a little bit kind of, it means that the kind of fortunes of our economy are a little bit dependent on others, you know. If you check what our chemicals position is, so 0 chemicals out, so there's no exports. Yeah, so it's a nice net gain. That's fine. I'm happy with that. That's okay then. We'll keep it at 50. Dyes are just a wash in. Let's have a quick look at cattle production. Yeah, we just basically break even at 35. So another thing as well, as a reminder, is the higher the amount you have in your stockpile, it drives the price down slightly domestically, so you get slightly increased domestic. But at a certain point, you reach a kind of an equilibrium, which is where we're at, which means that 35 units, we sell about the same numbers of units of cattle on our domestic market. That's fine. That's great. That's perfect. Yeah, that we produce every fortnight, basically. There is a ceiling to that. It's not like an infinite thing. It's not something stupid where if I have, you know, where you can basically have everything that's not for export and it will just endlessly increase demand. That won't happen. You reach a ceiling. I tend to find it's around 30. 30, depends on what the units are, 20 to 40 units of something held back on the domestic market. For me, anyway, I get the feeling that's where you reach a kind of an equilibrium. And if you produce significantly more than that, then let's just check tea production for a minute. I don't know what that's about. Something kind of strange happened with tea production. Yeah, I tend to find if you have significantly more than, like, if you're producing more every turn and you're building, you know, like you go from 40 to 50 units to 60 units, then you're an export power. Basically, you need to export that commodity to make it profitable. Otherwise, you'll just eventually reach a limit in terms of how much of that stock could be held in your economy, and you just start losing it through waste and corruption, which sometimes happens anyway. Like, I export a lot of dyes, but I bet I lose. I mean, what's good as well is how much, like, the limit that you have in terms of the amount of commodities that could be stored in your economy also reflects the general size of your economy. So a smaller economy has a small limit, for example. So I don't know what the limit is, but I could be almost there with dyes. Well, at one point I had well over 1,000 units of coal, and I still had to reach my limit. So dyes. Yeah, okay, so, you know, we're very much there with dyes. Wastages and corruption results in the loss of 56 units of dyes per turn. I mean, I suppose we could just turn, to be fair, we could just turn all our dye sites off. So dyes, all right. Input, output is what we want, isn't it? Yeah. Okay, so let's unselect all of them. Look at that, and none of them are even. There's only one that's upgraded in Syria. We don't want to turn the chemical sites off, so we just turn the dye sites off. I mean, they're making like some of them do make margin, so some of them are productive in their own right. The Syrian one really is. I tend to leave that one open. So we're basically mothballing them. I'm going to check this upgraded one, because I just want to see if it produces anything else. Sometimes, when you upgrade certain kinds of RGOs, they produce something else as like a secondary commodity. So it's just dyes. The Syrian one is here, I think. Yeah, it's just purely dyes. 15 units. But yeah, sometimes, so for example, like wool, for example. Wool ranchers will produce cattle, small amounts of cattle, as a kind of sub-commodity, like a secondary commodity. Sometimes it's worth keeping them open just for that, you know. Right, so, yeah. So, obviously, dyes are produced as a secondary commodity in chemical plants. We definitely don't want to start closing those down. Because, obviously, they produce chemicals, and we definitely need chemicals. But kind of dye quarries in their own right, I think we've got such a huge stockpile. Let's close most of them down. We'll keep the most profitable one open, the one that's got the biggest margin. Excuse me. And start working through our national stockpile. It may even be the case that even with most of those closed down... no, I mean... Well, there's one way we can find out, actually. It's completely zero. So we lose less than 100. And that's with one dye quarry open. Just because our chemical sort of factories now also produce some synthetic dyes. So we might even keep those permanently mothballed, you know. We'll see. Anyway, I think imports and exports are set. Let's just double check. I'm fairly happy with everything there, I think. Yeah, happy with that. Just got to check how much gold we imported. We're still importing gold for the exchange. Soon as gold. Yeah, like a little trickle by the looks of it. Coal, timber. Let's just check. Yeah, timber, that's good. We've got a coal stockpile to fall back on. Let's have a quick look at China. Just want to look at coal sites in China. Well, let's export some capital and build. So we've got a timber site. Let's look how productive that is. It's not very productive, I don't think, but yeah. Excuse me. So 4. Again, I mean, it's like, in terms of the amount of like output, because of how backward China is, it's such a breadbasket economy. It's going to be so, like, you know, for a long time, for decades probably, it's going to be like a really low yield economy, but just generating a little bit, you know, kind of getting kind of like capitalist development off the ground in China in kind of embryonic form through investment from the Ottoman Empire. It's definitely a worthwhile move. It unloads capital and develops possible strategic partner down the line. That's the economics. I think Austrian peace proposal. Let's have a look at what that is. It's going to be a white peace, probably, I'd imagine, or something not terribly interesting for us. Reparations, seed colony. No, I'm not interested in like Pacific colonies. Bear in mind we have got a small Pacific possession from one of our wars, you'll remember. Happy with that. I think that's it. That's the economics report. Economy looks sound. Just make sure, check all the boxes. None of them are red, so we're meeting domestic demand in terms of our projections. I'm going to have a very quick look through government departments. I don't always do this. We've already had a look through the War Ministry at our replacements. Inflation's at 0. That's nice to see. Happy with the tax settings. They've not really made too many adjustments. The adjustments I tend to make early on are high tariffs. Which have kept fairly high tariffs. That creates downward pressure in terms of your diplomatic relations, of course. But to try and get an economy off the ground and stimulate domestic demand, you do want that. It's worthwhile doing, really. And the really protectionist economies during this period were the ones that were successful, namely the United States, Germany, and Japan. Even though people would have you believe that this was the period of classic laissez-faire, the truth is it was the protectionist economies with a lot of state intervention that did rather well. We've already checked our Academy of Sciences. This is our position, isn't it? The Society Islands. So again, I'm just thinking ahead of the game. Abdulhamid, if we get diplomatic income, we can seal the deal with Eritrea. Then you've got Sudan, Abyssinia. Oh, there could be some really good prospects for East Africa. This is wide open. The British in real life got into Kenya, but they're not there yet. And they're preoccupied elsewhere. I think they're probably looking to consolidate Nepal and the sort of subcontinent. And like some parts of India are still under protectorate status. So there could be some real opportunities in East Africa. And also areas that were traditionally German colonies. Namibia, Southwest Africa, Cameroon and so on. Which is kind of here. There's real possibilities that we could end up being we could supplant Prussia, and even in the Pacific, maybe Solomon Islands, which is a Prussian-influenced territory. I mean, we were toying at one point with trying to challenge the Dutch in Sumatra, and it didn't pan out, obviously. We sort of sunk, but there's a bit of a sunk cost there. We still have some colonial infrastructure there, which kind of remains intact. We've got traders and we've got kind of merchants and this sort of thing. It's just that it's a consolidated Dutch territory now, so there's not much we can do politically. Unless we challenge. Of course, we're our defensive power in terms of objectives. They're all held. Okay, fine. Austria, 1.2 of ours, so they still have a larger army in terms of raw combat power. But we look to be in good shape. Japan's got quite a big fleet already. Look at that. 200 combat power. That's interesting. Right, that's enough of that. Early September, I'm going to put you on pause, going to pass turn. We'll see you on the other side then in late September. Okay, welcome back. It's late September, and yeah, big turn. Really big turn. So, as you recall, we're looking to kind of bottle the Austrians up. They fell south towards Bucharest. And we have the Battle of Bucharest, and this is an almighty battle. I think this has to be, we'll go through the results, but this probably constitutes the biggest victory that we've seen in the field since the beginning of the campaign. By the campaign, I don't mean this war, I mean the game, 1850. It's unbelievable. First engagement then. So now we've got 400,000 Austrian troops, which leads me to think that some of the Austrian troops had already fallen back to Bucharest prior to the previous engagement, which was like 300,000 plus Austrian troops. It's more. They actually outnumber us. We've got a force that's half the amount, but we're hitting a disorganized sort of, Austrian force, big command penalty, badly organized. It's now under the command of von Philippsburg, and I mean, it's absolutely devastating. 138,000 casualties. We take like 27,000 prisoners. I mean, it's sensational. We do take casualties, but that exchange rate is unbelievable. Both ranged and assault casualties, it's huge. We get 6 national roll points. That in itself would have been great. I mean, that would have been a great result. Would have been happy with that. Even if the Austrian force escapes entirely. There's a second engagement. So the enemy army's rout takes 56 hits during the rout. I mean, the second engagement is unreal. They lose another, 127,000 casualties. 539 cannons. That's like a third of their artillery force is destroyed. Unreal. And then, just under 38,000 prisoners. So over 2 engagements, we chunk this Austrian force for nearly 250,000 men. I mean, it's unbelievable. Yeah, probably more than 250,000 men, 60,000 casualties. We lay waste to entire kind of elements. I mean, this is probably a corps or slightly more, based on 1 service asset unit, 2 different artillery regiments, or probably corps artillery regiments, a field hospital unit. It's unreal. And that's a fairly short action. I mean, it's I think it's 2 rounds. 2-round action, and it's sensational stuff. It's brilliant. I mean, it's exactly what we came here to do. And the second engagement is which is even bigger. So I'm looking at that 3 HQ, so that's 3 core HQ units destroyed at range. What I like about these engagements, what we're seeing more of now, are these ranged casualties. We're seeing the effect of this kind of upgrade of our artillery force, which, I mean, over a period of years, this is the great thing about this, is that it takes years and years to invest. It's really bearing fruit now, and it means that these victories have even more sting. So, a little bit under less, maybe a third of the casualties, they're sustaining are ranged casualties, but it's those HQ units that are really suffering from the ranged casualties. And their artillery as well, the artillery exchange rate is suggesting that we're getting a really nice exchange in the artillery duels. Yeah, it's great. So it's 4 HQ core service asset units destroyed. 5 if you include the other engagement. So it's possibly 5 core completely destroyed, and that's a 1-round action. It's unbelievable, and that's von Rudisch that time. It's sort of 2 massive Austrian armies that are just smashed to pieces, absolutely devastated. And from that we get 2 commanders that are recruitable, that are promotable rather, I believe. Can't see it now. Well, anyway, one of them is Suleiman, down here, Suleiman Pasha, and he's got fairly average stats for the moment, but he's got really nice kind of abilities. He's got 1 malice, poor subordinates. That's not a bad malice. It just means that he can't have a really large force. He's not got a very effective staff around him, which I guess he retains through the promotion. So he's a commander that's going to be sort of kind of moving quite lean. But that's okay, One thing I really like about this is the more commanders you get, they're promotable. You eventually have less and less corps within a field command that have corps commanders. So you have a constant process of expanding your overall field command in terms of what you can put in the field. But there's a slight qualitative loss as that happens. I quite like that. I think that's fairly realistic. It means that, and it's relatively slight, but it is. I mean, it means that eventually we're going to have armies that only have 1 commander. It's going to have 3 staff for every field command, and they're going to be just slightly less effective. But that's offset. I think earlier on, good commanders are more important, is the feeling that I get. It's just a general feeling. It's not really qualified by anything necessarily, but but that later on, what you really want is scale and artillery, and as warfare becomes a more technical business, a more scientific business, what you want are these artillery assets, really, are the really important thing. But, so you've got to promote a commander. We're going to do that. We're going to detach him from his command. And we're going to use this as in terms of the East, for a bit of an operational pause for a couple of reasons. One is the promotable commander that we want. We're going to put him in Doria. Promote. That should be fine. Double check that. Because for some reason, sometimes it sort of unselects. No, that's good. Fine. So we'll get another 3-star out of that. I think there's another promotable commander as well, which is this guy. Fuad Pasha. Again, I mean, he's a really good offensive commander. Taxation of a land, strong disciplinarian, no malice. So we're not going to do anything up here either, so we're going to do the same. We'll give them back their subordinate commands in the meantime, because Aldi Pasha he's got a much bigger seniority. So he'll be a 3-star, but in a subordinate role. And they destroyed the railway network falling south, so we'll use the engineers in the 5th to sort that out. And that's it. I mean, all of our commands, fairly understandably, are not activated. Save for the 4th, but the 4th took some casualties, so we're going to put the 4th on a defensive posture. And the 6th may well... He took some casualties in the cavalry, one of his cavalry divisions. He's going to sort of function in a supported role. What I'm thinking of doing now, what I can see here, is the remnants of that command, approximately 150 to 200,000 men, an estimate, possibly joined with other units as well, as retreated into kind of northern Serbia to Belgrade. We're going to try and catch the rest of that force with our Western Command. Now, there is a large Austrian force now in Bihać under Bieland Right, but we're going to ignore him and hope that we can slip some forces in. The fast mover is Hussein Avni. It's 9 days. I'm going to set him to defensive posture. The slower force then is the first under Mehmed Ali. It would take him how long? 17 days. It's too long. 9 days or 11 days. See, I don't like the idea of moving him up to Sava. Because of this large Austrian force, which is fairly fresh and doesn't have it's got a 10% penalty, but it's got 2 corps in reserve in the same district. And a 10% command penalty. I mean, command penalties, I don't like running command penalties. It's a bugbear of mine. But when you've got a force that's that large, comprised of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 infantry corps, a couple of brigades, plus forces in the same district in reserve, a 10% command penalty is nothing to cry about, to tell you the truth, in a force that size. He's got subordinate commanders as well. Monte Pastello. I don't fancy going toe-to-toe with that. I want to kind of basically support this move. What I might do is put the first army on a force march, 75% chance. Gets him into Novi Pazar on day 8, which is a day before Hussein Avni gets to Belgrade. He also gets support from the 6th, by the way. So that's 3 stacks of nearly 300,000 men. In theory, and what is that? That is a bordering region, isn't it? Yeah. How long would it take him? 5 days. I'm going to do that as well. Or in fact, 6 days. Yeah, we're going to do that. 6 days, just in case the Austrians trying to slip a force into Agosto. You know it's going to happen. Means the only way they can go is south, which is towards Niche. We're going to try and catch them while they're weak, while they're low on numbers, while they're disorganised, and you can see now they have got an issue with supply. If we could destroy, if we could hit them again for another 100, 200,000, if we could get a result like that again, that'd be huge. I don't think we've ever had a turn where we've had 20 national morale from battles. Sensational stuff. It's just unbelievable. I just never imagined that it would come off that big. I thought they would try and kind of wear them down, maybe, you know, inflict 100,000 casualties. I mean, the remainder of their force has managed to slip out of there, but it was always a tall order that we're going to take. You know, we're going to destroy a force of 500,000 men in the Austrian army. It was never on the cards really. But I think beyond that, we're going to kind of stay. We're going to be a little bit careful here, because this Austrian force, 7th Army, is reinforced and it is pretty substantial, and the 3rd Army. The 3rd Army doesn't have any support. He's out on a limb. Eight days. 33 days. Oh my god. We're going to set him to retreat if engaged, basically. We're going to play it really careful. We don't want to get kind of carried away and get silly. So if he's engaged, he will seek to retreat. "15 days. The problem we've got now is that it's late September and the seasonal rains have come early, put simply. We've now got torrential rain across much of the kind of interior of the Balkan Peninsula. The coastal region is still quite nice, but we've now got the autumn rains and it's slowing down movement. Otherwise, this move may not come off. But the Austrians have to march through the same rain as us. It's not like they're going to they don't get a free ticket to move their forces super quick. So if he wants to get out of there, he's crossing a river north to Sombor, or he's going to get clapped in Sava. And in Sava, I mean, if the battle happens in Sava, the problem is if these forces try and join, then we can end up getting in a sticky spot with only 2 commands. But I think the reward's too great that it's worth the risk. There's no move here that's risk averse. And if we could, I mean, with these Austrian forces are low on supply, they're disorganized, and they've sustained massive casualties, which means that you're going to have, you know, like dozens of companies, like elements that are basically kind of like, they're comprised of a skeleton force, primed for destruction entirely. And the Austrians, just like us, will only be able to reconstitute elements if their forces are inside a town with a depot, basically. So yeah, talking of which, we need to get this captured supply force back to the arsenal. Turns out the Greeks weren't in. The Greeks are basically in Sofia, so that's a 10-day march. So we're playing cat and mouse with them. What have we got here, actually? Yeah, so that's... yeah, they've looted the province as well, which is irritating. So no prestige losses for anything, no rebellions to speak of. You know, there's been an American force, task force, and it is... I thought it must be merchants or something, or just continuous small forces passing through, maybe just, I don't know. It is a task force sat in the Marmara, comprised of 6 battleship divisions, 2 frigate. You know, why is there a large American force sitting there? Well, we don't have especially good relations with the Americans. I mean, we don't have especially good relations with anyone, frankly. I mean, these are like old ships. These are age of sail ships, and amazingly, we've got more modern ships than the Americans. I mean, the Americans may well have more modern ships sort of in port in Norfolk or something like that. But it's a little bit, you know, why have they got a force deployed there permanently? You know, is sort of Washington harboring some kind of wet dream for a kind of revisit of the Barbary Coast campaign. I think not. That's not on the cards anymore. But we'll keep an eye on that, because that is a little bit, you know. I mean, there's nothing else. There's no other concern. They don't have forces anywhere else, I can see. Let's have a look at their general diplomatic relations. Yeah, but they don't have very good relations with anyone. It may not be us. I mean, they've got bad relations with the French and the Austrians and the Prussians. They're at war with the Spanish. Those Spanish traders in the Black Sea. But there are here. Yeah, Italy is starting to become a commercial factor in the Mediterranean. Not quite on our level yet, but they're definitely getting there. Yeah, I think it's long odds. It seems inconceivable the Americans have any kind of designs on anything that we're doing, and even if they did, to what extent they'd be a threat to us at this stage in our kind of in our parallel history and our stage of development. But we'll keep an eye on it anyway. So we're reconstructing that rail network. We're going to have a quick look at the economy. Oh, what an idiot. I forgot to put these dyes back on export. It's about it too much. Coal, stable. Oh, we're definitely an oil producer now. Got 23 units of diamonds, 55 of gold for conversion, sitting at just under 3,000. State revenue's good. Nice big war chest. Okay, economy looks tight. No inflation. Reasonably high levels of satisfaction. Tea stockpiles recovering. Net soldiers recruited now at 6. Captured more supply wagons from the Austrians, okay. Captured field artillery regiment from the Austrians, oh, okay. Oh, so it seems to the engagement. Or maybe not. I think the engagement was definitely in Bucharest, but maybe sort of in transiting through here, their forces kind of fragment. So what have we got here? What have we captured? Interesting. We'll get them back in the arsenal as well. What's interesting about this, and this might be key, is Austrian artillery is not quite at the same level. I think these are iron artillery. This is the... we made a kind of very rapid qualitative leap in terms of our artillery. So we have kind of artillery, which is like, you know, this is a little bit like the kind of Prussians and the French in 1870. The Austrians actually have, probably not all of their artillery, but it looks like... I mean, these guns are slightly, only very slightly, by a few years. We're talking literally... This, I mean, the 1870s, 60s and late 60s, early 70s is a qualitative leap in terms of artillery. But these are kind of... I think they're breech loaders. They're like iron breech loaders. We've got steel So our artillery is slightly different gravy nowadays. It's sort of, yeah, this is the good stuff. But anyway, we capture. I mean, we should theoretically be able to upgrade those Austrian artillery regiments. What am I doing? Aren't we? Yeah, so supply wagons. We'll get them back. And we'll take those Austrian guns back as well. Thank you very much. Good stuff. Oh, here we go. So yeah, I've got two coming there. They're being promoted. Suleiman and Fuat. I think Fuat or Suleiman. I think it's Fuat is with us long term, as is Mukhtar Ahmed. So it makes. I mean, he's already promoted. So we want to promote this because there's a good chance. I think we're going to be losing, as I mentioned, Hussein Avni in the kind of coming political chaos. Anything yet? No, he's still there. There's nothing in the reports anyway. But like. I'm going to be keeping a careful eye on the political developments, but this is a nice way to kind of check out on him, for him really a massive, massive victory against the Austrians. Baden, that's okay. I mean, if I don't do the 1880 reset, which I'm veering away from now a little bit, partly because I'm really hoping that we're going to get diplomatic income with Abdul Hamid, because I've managed to mod the file, but again, I don't know if the files. I don't know, so we'll see what happens. But like, I mean, if I don't do the 1880 reset and we just carry this on, we are going to have to look at a long-term solution to Austria. There has to be sort of some way of kind of bringing this war every 2-3 years to an end, and maybe forcing the independence of Hungary. I mean, I've talked about the independence of Hungary, salami slicing them, and this kind of thing. But maybe Austria, at least a chunk of it, which is maintained, which again was really what's talking about at the beginning of this war, or the beginning of the last war as well, is just a long-term military occupation of a huge part of the Austrian Empire, and just to continuously destroy their army, continuously sortie into sort of the Germanic and Czech parts of the empire, retake Vienna when we have to, re-engage their army and sort of do that, break them down, and then try and get the best, most favourable terms possible, you know. We only have claims in the bordering regions, but either doing that, either just pressing the most severe terms we can each time until they're just so weak, so reduced, that they're just no longer a threat to us, really, which is kind of what happened, role reversal, right? But yeah. So, of course, we could also look at Oman if we get diplomatic income as well. There's not much there, but... all dies. Yeah, we definitely need those, right? That's it. Assets balance looks good. Yeah, I want to check that. Right, so what I'll probably do, actually, because this will be quite a long video, is leave this one here, but you won't be waiting 2 months for the next one. Probably a couple of days, something like that, and I mean that this time. So, yeah, we'll leave it here. Really sensational victory at Bucharest. I'm pretty happy with that. I think in terms of the moves that I'm going to make, this will be the move. So what I'll do is I'll pass turn. Next video will pick up then. We're in late September now, so next video will pick up in early October. In terms of kind of Army Group East, if you like, we're just going to hold our position for the most part, with the exception of the 4th, which we're moving to Agosta for a supporting move into supporting sort of Army Group West, really, in their move into kind of Belgrade. But beyond that, repairing the railways, promoting our commanders, and just and this is the dangerous position, really. I might do this. I might just. I mean, we've set him to basically retreat if engaged. He's not activated. It's an 8-day march in heavy weather. But I'd rather him be, because at least here he can be supported. Up there, it was a bit of a foolhardy move. My thought was that the Austrians were going to try and sneak out through Moldavia. But anyway, yeah, that's obviously not going to happen now. So we'll bring him back. Hopefully he's not engaged. If he is set to disengage. If that happens, you just don't know what's going to happen. And if he is engaged and can't disengage, we hope he can hold his own rather out on a limb. Abd al-Karim Nadir, he is a stellar defensive commander, our best defensive commander, and he's a seasoned, very seasoned commander by now, very experienced. So, and the Austrians, as far as we can see, don't have a commander in theatre. So they've got a lot of disorganized forces there. That reduces the impact of the mass they have, and they do have mass there now. But they might have a commander in Tarnopol. For all we know, they got a commander. He might take command within a day or 2 days, so we don't know. And also, there might be a commander that we just can't see. So that's it. We'll leave it there. I'll pick up their next video. Again, will be in early October, so I'll click past turn, and see you in the next one.